Liam Finn, welcome to Australian Musician.
Thank you. Good to be here.
We're talking to you because Crowded House are headlining the Red Hot Summer Tour in October, sharing stage with the Church and Angus and Julia Stone, Mark Seymour, Vika and Linda and the Waifs. Do you enjoy being on the road with a bunch of other bands and hanging out backstage?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We haven't really done something like that for a while. Obviously, you have an opening act or, another band that you tour with, and you're no doubt always, become tighter friends by the end of a tour. But this will be really great to do it with four other acts. It's sort of like a traveling festival.
Yeah. How do you like to spend the moments before hitting the stage? Does the band or yourself have any pre-gig rituals?
Um, Generally, it's a pretty relaxed and silly environment. People trying to crack each other up. We kind of end up playing pretty stupid little games that seem to get us into the zone altogether, like trying to throw a sugar cube from one end of the dressing room into the rubbish bin or something like that, and it becomes very competitive and kind of almost can get turn a bit ugly. But I think it's a good tension to create before going on stage. Actually, my favorite one is the coat hanger on the rack and seeing who can do the most amount of rotations without it falling off. It has to land on at the end as well. That's a good one.
So hitting that first chord for the band, is that a nervous moment? Just to that you know that everything's working?
It's exciting. I mean, there's always a little bit of nerves and butterflies, and long may that last, but it gets pretty comfortable on a long tour. I think at the end of last year, and we did somewhere around 70 shows last year or something. It got pretty, I guess confident. Like we just were so confident and so there was still a momentous occasion every night, but it did also feel like you could be walking on stage any of the last few nights, and you just sort of I mean, Dad really throws a lot of curveballs in there, so we're always kind of ready for that. But the beginning of the show is probably the only thing we can ever be certain of.
Um,
So yeah, there's nerves, but I think it's a good amount of confidence, a good amount of nerves.
yeah.
Different members probably answer differently. Nick gets quite, but then he is the one that plays out of his skin as soon as he's on stage. So
Yeah, yeah, because Neil has a propensity to read the room and change up the set list, doesn't he, from night to night? So you kind of
yeah,
got to be on your toes.
yeah, I think everybody, including the crew, now kind of used to it. But there'll be they agonize over making sure it's the right guitar and the right thing for the thing, and then all of a sudden it gets thrown out the window, and he wants the piano out, and the rest of the set's not him playing piano. I think that's what kind of keeps us interested, really, and I think that's probably one of the things that Crowded House do that's a little bit different to a lot of the modern bands out there that are restricted with a track or a show that's going to a particular BPM for the light show, whatever. We're very, very off the cuff, and it's very, it feels very free.
Yeah. Did it take a while for you to feel like you were a permanent member of Crowded House as opposed to being a guitarist in your dad's band?
Um, I can't really remember. It was maybe a little bit of an adjustment, but as me and Elroy have played alongside Dad for since we were teenagers, it felt pretty normal. It just felt like a new chapter, and strangely, really made sense. Getting in the room with Nick and Mitchell, like we just kind of finished doing a bunch of stuff as a family band with Mum on bass, and me and my brother and Dad, and we did this tour in the UK and Europe in like 2019, I think it was, in the winter, and that was quite an amazing thing to look across the stage and see my nuclear family there with me. And I think it was on that tour that we all realized how much what a special thing it was and what a unique thing it was to have this all together. And already at that point, it was feeling pretty normal and pretty comfortable. But when it turned into Crowded House, I think there was maybe a bit more psychologically going into it, like what does this mean and what are we trying to uphold here, or what pressure does this bring with it? But I think, like I said, as soon as we were in the room with Mitchell and Nick, it was kind of like we all have the same sense of humor. We're all kind of like, it feels like being in a band with a bunch of 20-year-olds, as far as my experience anyway.
Uh,
So yeah, it felt very normal. So yeah, there's the Crowded House, the concept, and then there's Crowded House, the sort of um it encapsulates the way in which we were brought up, really, the type of relationship we had with our family and our close friends, the band members and stuff.
Yeah. As your dad gets older and wiser and the band gets older, do you find he's relinquishing some of the decision making? I mean, The How, one of your songs, is on the album. I imagine you're playing that one live.
Well, he decided we were doing that song, so no. No, I mean, yeah, I think he is really welcoming of there being more input and it being a real collaboration, I think that's what he found touring with Fleetwood Mac, and what he thought was great about a band like that is that every member really brings something to the table and is part of the sound of the band, and that's what he wanted, and what he wants out of having a band, is make every member of the band is kind of doing something interesting and is kind of an interesting character in their own right, and that makes the collective character. We all still look to him as being the leader of the band. Like, I think there's still a way that the dynamic works, and it works best is if there is someone. It can't be completely, everyone on the same thing. And like you said, he's very wise, and he's had a lot of experience, and he's written a lot of great songs. But yeah, it's kind of found a really nice little balance. Now we've just started making a new record, and it's probably the most wild and free kind of sounding thing that this band has done in a long time. Like, not that the other records weren't, but this just feels like we're stepping into it without feeling any imposter syndrome or any kind of anxiety about what am I doing in the band. It feels really like succinct and confident.
So how does that work? Neil brings a demo to a band session, and you're all.
Yeah, I mean, it always goes down differently as far as how it starts, but I think generally we all go away and write as much as we can on our own. Like, I do it for myself anyway, and Elroy does it, and Mitchell's always mucking around, and so is Nick. Everyone kind of has the opportunity at the beginning to sort of find their little moment to speak, like when we're starting to jam, to go, oh, most of the time Dad's got a plethora of stuff to sort of test out, but then every once in a while we'll try one of mine or one of Elroy's, or next little idea he's done from a little tape made at sound check when we were jamming at, sound check or something like that. And so from there it kind of gets probably destroyed by the band, to be honest, until we hear how it might actually sound good, and then that writer generally goes away and kind of has to finish it off and then bring it back again a bit more completed, so we actually can learn it properly. Some of them have kind of come together through just like somebody's got a riff, and we kind of find it's a vibe, and then someone, generally me or Dad, will gravitate towards trying to write a melody on it. But it kind of ends up being, like you're saying, a lot of Dad's little demo ideas, and then a few of mine, and then whatever kind of rises to the surface becomes whatever we're excited about, really becomes the next thing.
What about the little bits of fairy dust, like the backwood guitar sound or something like that? Is that more likely to come from you or your dad?
I think obviously on stage I get those jobs a lot, but in the studio, I don't know. Like, yeah, I mean, I find that when I'm learning music or when I'm playing in a studio, it's a lot better in a way if I'm not if I've learned the song, how it goes and what the chords are. But if I kind of just improvise my way through it, and it ends up meaning that we stumble upon quite little weird bits that are kind of almost unreplicatable ever again, but we've kind of keep them, they'll make their way all the way onto the record, because they, again, you couldn't, can't do it again, they're little one-offs. But Dad's quite good at going away and writing those really, and doing some quite strange stuff as well. Again, it's really like, it's very collage and open collaboration. And I think that what we're trying to do on this record versus the other ones is do less taking it away and working on it on our own, like trying to really make sure we're in the room together, and which does require things being a bit more finished in the state when the band comes at it, because quite often they are loose structures and loose concepts, and we'll jam for 10 minutes on it, and sometimes those things will cut down into 3 minutes, and that'll be the recording. But we want to sort of do that work first and play the 4 minute song as it is. And yeah.
Yeah. I was watching an episode of that pedal show from 2022. They
Oh,
were
yeah.
looking at your dad's and your pedal boards, which was quite interesting. Playing the Red Hot Summer Tour with so many outdoor gigs, does that alter your gear choices at all?
Not really, no. I mean, obviously, it sucks when it rains and the crew are mad scrambling to protect our precious pedals. But no, I mean, I think I've got a lot of pedals for that show, and I really like meticulously tried to get some quite authentic 80s and 90s sounds from those old Crowded House records because it was something that was like exciting to me to think about recreating some of those sounds. And I never heard Crowded House in the past recreate anything. They were kind of always just moving forward and playing the songs. But I love some of those things are hooks to me. But saying that, sometimes when it starts raining a lot or something, and someone's pedal board goes down or something like that, we've ended up just plugging into our amps direct and or just on acoustics, and it's been just as good. So I don't know. It's kind of a luxury to have all those gadgets and toys, but the songs kind of come across no matter how we end up playing them.
Yeah. So, which guitars are you currently playing on stage?
Well, I mostly play an old Telecaster that I've had for a long time. That was Dad's before mine. It's an old 67, and I've got my second Telecaster. That's a 90s one. That's my backup with a Bigsby on it. And then really that's kind of sees me through most of the set. But I also have a beloved little Silvertone electric guitar that's got a really distinct um, cool sound about it, and that's kind of found its way in a lot more since we've made the last two records because I played that quite a lot on the records.
Yeah. You've been around the music business your whole life, and I'm sure you've met some amazing musicians. Is there anyone that has or would make you feel starstruck by meeting them?
Yeah, I mean, Neil Young would be incredibly intimidating probably to beat, but that he's my god. Um, I just recently at last year at a festival that we did here in California got to meet Mark Mothersbaugh, and I'm a huge Devo fan, and that was quite a nerve wracking. I was pretty didn't really know what to say, but luckily I was with Mitchell, who knows him a little bit, who kind of instigated the meeting and had given me this really rare book of his early artworks to get signed to sort of give me an in, like I look like some really cool, committed old fan. But he was really nice, and he sort of said to me without giving me any warning, just like he said, "Give me your hand," and I gave him my hand, and he put it into a fist and held it up against his face. And when we were going to get a photo, and made it look like I'm punching him, knocking him out. And so I've got this great photo of me punching Mark Mothersbaugh. Oh,
Um, you mentioned the next recording that you're working on. Any idea, or do you have a deadline in mind for that?
we have a loose deadline. Yeah, we're getting back together in August to try and track it, and we're doing it with Chad Blake. So it's the old team, Mitchell and Chad, that made the first couple of records, and it's quite exciting because he's a really great. Well, he's a fun person to be around in general. Chad, really interesting guy and amazing engineer and producer. So I'm quite excited to hearing what he brings because we just did a few weeks in New Zealand, testing the waters, and like that kind of part of the process that we were talking about before, kind of just seeing what happens. And it made me kind of think, oh, we should probably be doing this part of the process with Chad because he'll make things sound so kind of wild and bombastic coming back. It'll kind of propel things forward at a pretty fun rate, exciting rate, I think. So yeah, that's happening before we do this Red Hot tour. So I'm sure that we'll end up probably playing some of the new songs, testing them out on the tour, and then if we think what we got in that first session is it, then it'll be finished probably by around the end of the year. But I know how these things kind of go, and they always end up getting drawn out. So, but you never know. We are trying it a bit differently this time. We're getting a bit more prepared.
Yeah. Is there a Crowded House song that's closer to your heart than others for whatever reason?
Um, I mean, I go through phases, and sometimes when some of the deeper cuts make their way into sound check or the rehearsals to kind of something a little bit different we haven't done for a while, it reignites my love for them, and you sort of forget how many awesome songs there are. Like Fingers of Love, we just started doing again on the last tour, and it's added so much. It's brought, you know, a really wonderful dimension that we didn't have as much of. Um, I guess maybe in the same way that Private Universe does. It's sort of a dreamy and kind of pretty trippy song, but something about Fingers of Love is, yeah, it's a highlight for me to play on stage because I love the lead guitar stuff on it.
Yeah. You've got an album of your own, Hyperverse, coming out very soon, and doing any solo shows around that?
I'm not planning to yet because we're sort of pretty busy doing all the Crowded House stuff. But no, it's exciting that have that project out finally because I'm sort of been drip feeding it out over the past 2 years. Really, it kind of it's been a really long project that because I've done it completely independently and sort of trying to circumvent the traditional industry, I sort of just reframed the entire cycle that you go through as an independent artist, at least from my experience in my previous solo records. Is you make this thing, you put so much work into it, and you're excited and you love it and you think it's the best thing you ever did, and you hand it over to your record company and they put it out. And 6 months later, when you've kind of almost moved on as well, you want to move on to the next thing. And then it has 2 weeks or so to see if it sticks in any way. And if it doesn't, your record company always seems to move on and kind of go on to the next thing, and you're left there going, what am I supposed to just start again, in the cycle? But this one, I really was kind of excited about it and really loving all the creativity around it, making little videos for it and stuff. So I just put out a song by song every 2 months or so and made a video for it, and did everything myself, and tried to reframe the kind of shape of what an album release is. So the album coming out in the next 2 weeks is I'm already over it. so if it doesn't stick, I'm like, great, let's make another one. I feel energized to take what I've learned from this experience and make a new record. So yeah, so it's been really a really cool and interesting. I've learned so much in this, being completely DIY and self-releasing, and kind of it's been an incredibly gratifying and kind of new experience. So yeah, it's finally out June 20, Hyperverse.
Cool. What are you looking forward to most about the Red Hot Summer Tour?
Just playing shows every night. I love it. It's the thing that I've always really loved, is performing, and it's probably a real unreality and something that you kind of almost like a sort of a hole that's hard to fill when you're not doing it. In a way, it's a real adjustment, I guess, having those endorphins and adrenaline every night for months on end when you're touring a record, and then all of a sudden you stop and you get really, I can't sit down at 8 p.m. I'm like, why am I so anxious? So I just am excited that we're going to be doing, it's quite a long tour, but it's a real, I don't know, especially in this day and age, it's a real privilege to be able to kind of tour and be a working musician and get to see so many smiles in the crowd and play songs that you really care about, and be in a band that feels really free to do whatever you want, say whatever you want. It's good fun.
Yeah. Well, Liam, it's been great to chat, and we look forward to seeing Crowded House down here very soon.
Awesome. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, mate.